into it, I'd like to I don't know what we'll call you guys, the World Cup team. I don't know. Is there a team name, Dr. Sorokin, for the World Cup group?
No.
No team name. So you
Turf.
can hit us up on Twitter to give the World Cup team a name. But we've got Dr. Sorokin with us, Dr. Dickson, and Rhys Fielder. They comprise kind of the heartbeat of UT's activities related to the World Cup. It's a big group of people, but they are really the engine that makes it go. So thanks for being here today, guys.
Yeah, good to
Yeah,
be
thanks for having
here.
us.
So to jump into it, John, everybody knows you, so we're gonna pass. But
Yeah, let
for
Kyley and Rhys carry this one. This is good.
yeah,
This is their show.
For Kyley and Rhys, why don't you guys start? And I don't care really who goes first, but tell the folks that are with us, we've got 100 people or so listening, who you are and kind of what you do at UT in general, and then maybe what brought you into the world of the World Cup.
Yeah,
You want to
you
go
guys
ahead,
both
Kyley,
have
while you got
great
good
stories,
service?
so go ahead.
Say research.
You can go ahead,
Sorry,
Kyley, just while you have service.
Okay. If I start cutting out, Rhys, just let me know. I'm Dr. Kyley Dickson. I do a lot of research on sports turf stuff in general. I'm the associate director for the Center Athletic Field Safety. So I've been with Dr. Sorokin for a while now. And as the World Cup project came up, I've got to luckily be involved and kind of help support just all the cool ideas, things that we're looking at as we get through that. But I've been working with Dr. Sorokin for over a decade now. So we've been doing sports turf research of different kinds. And as we've kind of gotten into the soccer, more of the soccer research, we've developed a device to test action stuff at the surface. And so we've been doing a lot of testing. I've been going around to a lot of stadiums, kind of doing that. Rhys has been handling a lot of the stuff, all the research that's kind of been happening back at Knoxville on campus from that aspect. And I've been doing a lot of traveling around and testing some of the graduate students as we've been doing this to kind of see what are the fields like kind of out that we're going to be playing on, like what conditions are we trying to simulate, and what do we have from testing all around North America to Europe. We've got to do a lot of fun testing, a lot of cool stadiums where we've tested over 100 places. That's kind of how I got involved with that, was doing a lot of sports turf research. And it's been a really fun opportunity to kind of get into this and kind of do a lot deeper dive into some of this stuff that we've been able to do indoors and like this indoor research of growing grass than what we've been doing. So, Rhys?
Yes, my name is Rhys Fielder. I'm a research associate at the University of Tennessee, primarily working on the FIFA project. Got my undergrad at the University of Tennessee, and during that time, was able to do internships with an MLS club, New York City Football Club, and then a elongated internship with Arsenal over in the UK. And so really my entire turf background and when you get the turf industry, I've been an avid soccer fan all of my life. So finding some way to be involved in the sport without per se having to put on a suit and go into an office and be in the front office, more kind of be on the ground and be more involved with the team, especially when it comes to the likes of performance and player safety. And so after I graduated and finished my internship at Arsenal, I talked to Dr. Sorokin about opportunities that were kind of available and murmurs of the World Cup and that research coming to basically Tennessee started growing and growing. And so I ended up coming on board as a master's student, trying to finish that up, and now in a full-time position with Dr. Sorokin working in what we have is our FIFA building at the research facility where we do indoor research. I'll get more into that later, but.
So I know you'll be able to answer this question, Rhys. I'm not a big soccer, not very knowledgeable in soccer. Let's put it that way. I don't want to say I'm not a fan because that implies that I don't like it. It just was never on my radar as a kid. Where I grew up in Massachusetts, just wasn't something I was into. Being around you guys and working here, you kind of learn a little bit by osmosis, right? Just because it's been such a central theme that has kind of been part of the turf program for the past couple of years. Tell the folks that are listening, just give them the fifth grade lecture on what is the World Cup and just kind of the primer on the basics of the World Cup.
Yeah, I'm biased, but I will say it's the single greatest sporting event in the world. Obviously, you have the Olympics that embodies so many other athletics all at one point. People have great patriotic pride watching their country win medals, but when you get to the World Cup, it's a single sport, it's a single atmosphere. And then also at least from like a player perspective, they have kind of their domestic league they play for instance, like in the NFL playing for their team. But then a lot of players will say it's one of their greatest honors to pull on their country's shirt and play in that event. And to the same degree, people just have a different level of pride watching their team compete or their country compete at that level. The most recent World Cup was most of the World Cups prior was a 32 team tournament. They have now expanded that to be a 48 team tournament. So there'll be 12 additional teams, more games. And then obviously moving now into the Canada, Mexico, and the US being the largest World Cup there will be up to this point, not only with the number of teams, but the geographical area they'll be covering.
It's pretty wild. That's much bigger than one Super Bowl, right? I think I heard you say at one point, this is like the event in 2026 that's coming to the Americas is it 7 Super Bowls at 7 different locations over a 2-week period? Is that the right number?
I know Sorokin said billions and billions of people. I'm not sure the numbers he's got. He might be able to give you the exact number, but there it is. Essentially, you'll see charts of where they say however many hundreds of millions of people watch the Super Bowl, and then basically blowing off the chart is how many people are watching the World Cup final. So you just have so many more eyeballs, given that the NFL is not solely an American sport, but most of the viewing audience is going to be American, where you see the World Cup and it's literally you're getting viewership from almost every inch of the planet.
Yeah, the last Super Bowl had record viewership by, I think, 30 million people. And I think that was Swifties wanting to get a view of Taylor Swift. But that was still less than 300 million people watching that Super Bowl around the world. And the last World Cup final was 1.8 billion. So 20% of the world tuned into one game at one time. That's kind of staggering when you think of those numbers, and 5.4 billion total viewership through that 30-day tournament.
So there'll be a lot of eyes on your work then.
Yeah.
So, I guess maybe go through, like, you guys are the lead research institution for the World Cup right now. Like, what does that look like for the people outside? Like, what does being the lead institution for World Cup research entail?
A lot of questions. You provide answers, and then people ask you additional questions. But really, the way I kind of view my job and what we're doing right now, especially with regard to a lot of the indoor research we do, which, to explain that a little bit more, is 5 of the 16 venues that'll be utilized in 2026 are indoor dome stadiums that do not have the facilities essentially in place right now to be able to manage natural grass, which is a requirement of the World Cup. So we do work inside that building that's climate controlled. We have LED grow lights, irrigation system, provide for like basically anything you would provide outside, with the exception of all of our energy that usually comes from the sun is provided by LED grow lights. And then our climate is controlled by air conditioning units. But essentially, to a degree, I'm trying to figure out how we can fail as often as possible from our point of view, so that way we can give the field managers the best chance of success, so they don't run into what's potential for failure when they only have 30 days for field to perform. We have multiple years to be able to see what's working well, what's working poorly, how can we make these the best fields possible, what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think last year, John, we had you and Trey on, and you guys talked in depth about the sod on plastic component, and that being kind of a central part of the whole World Cup endeavor, right? That particularly for the indoor stadiums, it's going to be sod grown on plastic, and there's specific kind of benchmarks that you have to hit for FIFA in order to be, let's call it, appropriate sod. Am I saying that correctly?
Right. Yeah. We're just to get this appropriate sod, or just to have a FIFA quality pitch, is what they refer to. And it starts with having, game day ready sod that's going to be installed a couple of weeks before the first match. And in most of these stadiums, 8 of them are artificial, and they have to get converted to grass. And the short window to do that and have that be at the high standards they want. And the best way to do that is sod on plastic, for sure.
So, and I mean, I'll ask the simple questions, I guess, because I'm ignorant of some of the details. Will every stadium be the same turfgrass species? I know you guys have done a lot of work with Kentucky bluegrasses. Is that going to go into every venue, or will some stadiums be different species?
One of you want to take that, or do you want to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So essentially what we're looking at now is Bermuda grass and some mixture of bluegrass with ryegrass within it. Most or all of the indoor venues will be cool season grasses, just given that there'll be more optimal conditions for them. With a large amount of the outdoor venues most likely being Bermuda grass. But that's essentially the two species that we're looking at are going to be pushing forward with for what World Cup services will be.
So when you
Right.
talked, Rhys, a little bit about like trying to make all the mistakes so somebody else doesn't, which is an admirable way to go about doing it. So, you think about you're moving in, like where does it get started? Like, was the first step to figure out, do we want it to be 80% Kentucky bluegrass and 20% ryegrass? And then once we get that figured out, we start looking at different lighting conditions for an indoor stadium. Like, kind of talk a little bit about the workflow of what this might look like.
Yeah, so originally when we were kind of on the ground getting started with this project, it was myself, Ryan Beers, and Jackie Guevara, who are work for Michigan State, who we collaborate with this project on. We made our way to Carolina Greed Sod Farm out in the Charlotte area, and essentially we were trying to figure out on our own, just so we can get some experience doing it, how the whole sod on plastic industry works. This was back in early 2021. And to kind of grow some sod of our own, so we can not only understand kind of the process, but also, especially with these hybrid carpet mat systems that will be grown into, which kind of understanding how that process works as well. And so essentially, we started from basically the ground up, looking at how does this sod grow, and then getting to a point of different seeding ratios. Growing sod on plastic can be kind of tricky, considering you're allowing a lot of Mother Nature can kind of dominate a lot of how well your growing can occur, depending on weather conditions or things of that like, or irrigation getting stuck on or what have you. But um, we were able to kind of figure out a system that worked well and understand for ourselves. So that way, when we go and talk to other people about it, we at least have our own personal experiences growing the sod. And then from there, we've kind of gotten to a point now where replicating kind of what this grass will experience during the tournament. So that being said, with different treatments from fertilizers and, like you said, lighting treatments within the FIFA building, but then also kind of applying traffic to be able to mimic what the environment of playing games, but then also the recovery period to see from game to game what the surface may look like, because the heaviest load portion these fields will endure is during the group stages. And some of these venues literally have a matter of 6 matches in 12 days. So what we're kind of pushing forward now with our research angle is looking at how can we have the grass as strong as possible prior to match day one. But then following that, what can we do in a 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour period at the most, potentially, to give the grass the best chance to recover and be ready for another match.
And does it does it look the same stadium to stadium, right? I mean, that all is very logical what you outlined. Is it a situation where I'm going to pick venues just off the top of my head? You figure out and you do all the testing for like what might happen at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, and then you've got to go and do another kind of battery of different tests to simulate what might happen. I forget the name of the stadium in Houston. It used to be called Energy or NRG. I don't remember what it's called now. Um, you do the testing for Houston, or is it you guys are working to find like, here's kind of what the indoor protocol is going to look like, and that's going to be the protocol that's for every indoor stadium, and then you have another battery of tests that's more of the outdoor protocol?
Yeah, I think every stadium is going to end up being a la carte to some degree, just because, I mean, a stadium creates a unique microclimate. And now we're talking about a microclimate within a microclimate because we're putting it indoors. And then we're essentially operating under the assumption that even if there is some amount of sunlight getting in, we're operating under the idea that we're not getting anything besides what these LED lights are putting out. So I think generally we'll have basically some sort of management plan to be able to say, like, across all venues, this is what most we should be recommend doing to make this successful. But even from there, every stadium is going to have to understand the own nuances they have with their stadium to then be able to monitor or take care of their field successfully, which is a big part of what we do in trying to get our information out to these field managers. Because if Kyley and I go and test the field, we're only there for a day. Whereas these guys are on the ground in their stadiums potentially 365 days a year. They know how the field operates, how it plays. They know when their field is good. They know when it may be bad. They know what areas might get dry, what areas stay wet, et cetera, et cetera. So getting the field managers on board and kind of keeping a constant dialogue with them has helped us be really successful in being able to kind of build what we've got this far.
And, will there be like a testing protocol in 2026 that like you guys work through and you kind of figure out, let's call it best practices, right? And I think I would imagine, you correct me if I'm wrong, any one of you all, that the work that's done in Knoxville, there's going to be a testing component to look at athlete to surface interactions, and you guys have some of the coolest toys to collect data that are on planet Earth, really. That you measure all that stuff in Knoxville, you figure out these are best practices, and then in 2026, will you have to go to every World Cup venue and then check it basically to see that like what you have found in these trials is actually true in place before they play a game? And I ask that because I know, John, your involvement with American football, there's testing to ensure that certain benchmarks are met, right?
Absolutely. And, we've, and as Kyley had mentioned, he's gone and tested over 100 fields all over like England, Canada, the US. And what we've established is we've identified an athlete to surface interaction, and we can do a soccer or a football condition, but for the soccer conditions, we've identified, and Kyley's been and Rhys went to Arsenal, for instance, in the EPL, and Aston Villa, what we consider pristine playing surfaces at the peak of what their conditions were. And we've got varying levels of good and bad fields from all over the place. And we've established this corridor, what we call corridor, of what we want to target for the range for a player running and cutting on a surface would be, for the loads being put back on the body, but also the compliance of the surface itself. And that's what that Flex device can measure. And we've set that as the standard of what we want for all the World Cup venues to be in the range of. And as Rhys said, this a la carte for every stadium, we've proven that we could grow it on a shallow profile, as you've seen in the dome, Jim, the permavoid with just reinforced sod on plastic over that. And that's the same ground reaction forces as 12 inches of sand, and that the body is feeling. And now we're establishing something that's going to be a legacy also, that is going to change the game going forward beyond this, for the availability to put in a portable temporary turf that's a high quality standard playing surface is really cool. And we will scale it up. The FIFA's got a whole bunch of testing, that the other testers that go test for parameters of all the stadiums, but we'll also apply our standards that are based off of the evidence-based research we've been doing for the last few years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think the sod on plastic thing is, I mean, it's just incredible, and I mean, has the potential to impact more than sports fields. You could see a scenario, and I think, Rhys mentioned Ryan Beers earlier. I think he's already working on sod on plastic for golf greens, right? To look at bent grasses grown on plastic to make, bent grass renovation of a green simpler. And that's a tangent that we ought to not go down to stay on topic here. But anyway, segueing back, one of the things that, we, in the description of this session, talk a little bit about kind of the agronomic practices and any pest management practices that would be needed. And I know I've talked to you, John, about, herbicide use kind of on these surfaces. And for me, if I'm a field manager and the sod shows up to my stadium and it's weedy, I'm probably rejecting the sod, right? That the applications might be made at the sod farm before it shows up to the site. But like, what have you guys learned with dealing with a shallower profile? Have you had to change or come up with a specific way to deliver nutrition, a specific way to deliver fungicides, like some of the basic agronomic parameters? Has that looked any different with that shallow profile compared to what it would be in a traditional system?
Rhys, I know Rhys has been doing some fertility studies and stuff with the shallow profile. So if you can expand on it, Rhys. But obviously when you've got just this little sod on plastic, for instance, or even the shallow pitch when it's installed, it can dry out a lot faster. So you got to be on top of everything, monitoring it, as well as looking at nutrients. Light and frequent would be more of a thing, but we're already doing that. So it's basically getting down to a spoon feeding program like you would do on a golf course putting green. You don't want the peaks and valleys of growth by putting a lot of nitrogen at once. It's all about managing the nitrogen and the recovery, but at the same time, not making it so lush and succulent or putting too much down that it's not gonna hold on in a 2-inch profile.
Yeah, I mean, and I can remember, I think Rhys, it was you and I and Dr. Siraka worked through this together. Like when you guys first started, you even learned that like growth regulator programs might look a little different inside on those shallow profile systems, right?
Yeah, that's basically what I was going to get along the lines too, is that we really haven't changed anything too much from an outdoor perspective, bringing it indoors to kind of like application wise. Major difference, I would say, granular products can be a little bit tricky just because our plot size in the building is only about 65 square feet. So if you using anything along the lines of urea or what have you with a high prill size and not needing a lot of product, like we've just found a lot more success being able to foliar feed as of right now. But I will say that, yeah, we're not, the amount of light that we're able to put out with these grow lights is not limiting to the plant. And so what we have found is that we completely like we're not working in a shaded environment if the lights are running the amount of time that we're able to run them for. And so we basically refined out earlier this year that we completely overregulated the plant with growth regulator Primo because it just wasn't going. I think we mapped it out to where it's going to take 3 or 4 months to metabolize it based on kind of the energy outputs that we had. So that's something that with what we're pushing forward now, kind of looking more into making those initial applications, maybe outdoors, get the plant acclimated to kind of that plant growth regulator. And then as we move it indoors, continuing those applications. So it's kind of not just a shock factor of receiving that growth regulator and then immediately being either inside already and different lighting and what have you. But yeah, that's more of what we've had to realize is things that work potentially outside managing kind of change the game when you bring it indoors. Because one thing we are curious about, or I looked into initially, that was kind of complicated to read at first, was how I was talking to a lot of fertilizer guys about how does the breakdown of their products potentially work, given that we're now in an indoor environment and factors are similar, but we just don't know if their release curves for a slow release product per se are going to follow the same trend they would in an outdoor environment. So it's kind of just things like that we're trying to see, like how do they compare to outdoors, given that it's similar temperature, water, light, but it's a completely different environment.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, not to go way back into soil physics, John, but I mean, you and I both have training in that area and know that shallow profile, just the way that water is going to be retained and moved through, it's going to be different, which would affect nutrient release and everything that you mentioned, Rhys. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
yeah. I don't envy you guys having to kind of make all these inferences because it's not like there's anything labeled for use on sod grown on plastic inside. You're going to kind of learn to go for everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
We do have one question that I'll bring forward before I get through my list of stuff to ask you. So the question here is about baseball fields, talking about often there's different soils on a baseball field that are underneath the grass or the infield, and they're designed to absorb different stresses that athletes may face with an idea of reducing injuries. The question is, will the sod on plastic kind of match this? Do you think that there'll be applicability for sod on plastic in baseball?
Yeah. So I'll take a stab at that question. So, the goal is uniformity and consistency, and what we've targeted. That's been the whole thing since the beginning of this World Cup is 16 stadiums from Mexico City at 9,000 feet to indoors 4,000 kilometers or 3,200 miles away in Vancouver, in a cool season climate, and then Miami tropical warm season. How do we make all of these things consistent and uniform, knowing we're going to have Bermuda grass and cool season grasses? And then over the course of 1 through 9 matches, Dallas is going to have 9 matches. How do we make sure that they're consistent across that whole time? And starting with, a uniform sod from different sod, working with the sod producers, they're all really good. So we can work with the sod producers to produce sod that's going to be as uniform and consistent as possible on a sand root zone. And that's with the testing what we do to get it all to be measuring as close to the same. So when a player plays in Miami on Bermuda grass and they go up to to Boston and play on Kentucky bluegrass, blue rye mix, it's going to be as close to the same feel of foot, knowing they're on two different grasses, but everything's going to be as close to the same. And so that's been our challenge. Baseball, they already use, game on like sod on plastic in a lot of these stadiums when they do resods and all that. It's not a new technology. It's been around for we've perfected it pretty good in the US. It's growing. So it's a pretty good technology. I think I see Nathan Cox is one of the attendees. He does a great job growing sod on plastic in Washington State, and he provides it for the Seattle Mariners stadium. So, it's already out there. Baseball, you go from clay on the infield, the skin, to the grass, and that's a transition that a player could maybe get a change and potentially get hurt. Hopefully not. But we want the grass to be as consistent as possible across all stadiums.
Hey, John, we got another question in the chat about the '94 World Cup and what knowledge and experience is being carried over from the '94 World Cup, particularly from the indoor stadium in Detroit, to what you guys are doing now. Yeah, so that, fortunately, I'm old and I was part of that project as a student worker back in the day. And, that's where under reduced light conditions, we know that plant growth regulators help. And so our goal is to target 22 moles of light per day, because from the grow lights, that's what we can get. And that's what Kentucky bluegrass needs. And the PGRs is just a tool in the toolbox. And that was the first time PGRs were really starting to be used to help with grass and shade. So we're going to continue that. But technology has improved so much with this big roll sod on plastic and this permavoid that we didn't need to go with the modular system. And we have grow lights now. Every stadium is going to have grow lights, as Rhys has mentioned. So I think the next big thing that we're going to want to do is, sit down with you, Becky. We've already been doing stuff about irrigation and sustainability stuff, but with Jim and Brandon, and come up with disease fungicide programs for these, what we can anticipate for these dome stadiums, especially. And then with Jim, when the sod comes in, you're taking it sod on plastic. The nice thing about it, you're not harvesting the roots. And so it comes intact. And so you're not stressing it because you're putting it in an indoor condition where it's going to be a level of stress. When and how quickly before we harvest the sod should we start applying PGRs? And that's the stuff I want to work with Jim on, is to figure out, so it comes in, because that first time you put a PGR down, you get that phytotoxicity. We don't want that to happen when it's already inside the stadium. So there's a lot of planning, and we kind of learned that from '94 when we put the PGRs. John Steyer, who's also part of this project, I remember him spraying paclobutrazol then, and just, before Primo, it's only an experimental name back at that point. But paclobutrazol, you got that yellowing, and we're like, oh, it's gone after 3 or 4 days, but you don't want that. I have another question for you, I guess. As I've gotten to be around this a little bit with FIFA field day planning and everything, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of emphasis on the implications of this for sports turf, but I think the sod on plastic, everything behind that, there's implications for the entire turf industry. How do you anticipate this research will impact other sectors of our industry? Do you see increased likelihood that we're going to see more sod on plastic used for golf course renovation and construction? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. And Kyley and Rhys can chime in as well. I think, as Jim had talked about, Ryan Beers, a PhD student here at Michigan State, where I am right now, in East Lansing, is looking at some sod on plastic for greens renovations. I think this is the first time where we actually have sports turf research driving and leading the innovation, I guess, for the turfgrass industry. It's always been golf historically. So the use of grow lights, why not grow lights on, on par 3 tee boxes that are far, to get them to help grow back a little bit quicker, or a shaded green, and coming up with that. And you could put it on the back part of a green, and you could put these out there and probably start implementing grow lights to help with some of these on golf courses. Just the sod on plastic. They've done that at Fox Den. One year they had a lot of issues with their driving range tee. Come in and coral off that driving range and put the game on grass. Chad Price's, game day ready sod. They can tee off. Members can start teeing off of it the next day. I think that's where you can start seeing some changes this will lead to other innovations, and same with the shallow pitch profile as well.
Yeah,
I'm Rhys, Kyley. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sorry,
definitely definitely no arguments there, John. I think there's plenty that will grow out of this, as you could make a case that things grew out of 94 that are now kind of ubiquitous in turf today. Particularly the idea of, a primo use in a reduced light situation. I guess my one question I would have for you guys, and any one of the three of you, feel free to take the lead on this. You started this work, I think, Rhys, you mentioned earlier, was it 21 you made your trip to Carolina Green? Did I hear you right?
Yeah, that was our first kind of like on the ground situation. But yeah, sometime in early 2021 was where we kind of initially started some projects.
So you've been at this since 2021. It's kind of coming to the, the last bit here, 2024. And I know there were some FIFA events this summer where they weren't dry runs, right? But like I'm sure you learned some things not only from the work that you've done, but also seeing some things with the stadiums that were used for the events this summer. Like, what are some of the things you've learned so far?
Well, from the testing we've been able to go do and observe and see, sometimes what we think, it's really interesting to see it is how important the quality of the sod is when it comes in. That's going to make a huge difference, especially with the shallow profile systems. We're really looking at a very short, a very small, root zone and so it's all contained. So the sod farmers got a lot of the quality of the sod coming from them is very important, and it seems to make a huge make or break for that. That's going to be pretty essential. And then having grow lights is going to be very important if you're looking at that for these indoor stadiums, because sometimes they'll being able to see the grass without the grow. Some of the places had grow lights, some of them did not. The difference between the stadiums that were able to have grow lights for these tests this summer, we were able to look at several different tournaments and games and kind of see where that went. And so it was very interesting to see how different you were going to get from if you had the grow lights, you had the sod on plastic and everything kind of going in, and how well that went versus some that didn't have the grow lights. And so it was kind of a struggle for some to see that the lights kind of really help the production of the grass continue going. But that sod quality's got to be really high going in. And it's really important kind of if you're looking at it there. The managers got to, once it gets installed, that was kind of, it's been interesting to see how they were able to kind of keep it going. And as we tested it, how a match could really impact the game, as the match would impact the field after there would be several. So one of the beautiful things that we were able to do this year was we were able to take ideas that we had back in 2021 that Sorokin and Rogers and Steyer were kind of spitballing ideas. We tested a lot of things, probably over 100 different shallow profile combinations to kind of get to kind of what we were wanting to try out, what we thought was good. So basically we used that ball to surface interaction and player to surface interaction and seeing how those would kind of combine to make, since soccer uses both of those, it's very important. But if it feels good for the athlete, but the ball is bouncing, a mile high, that's not going to work. Or if it's going to, or it's not going to bounce at all. That's we saw some of those when we were doing a lot of these different combinations of trying to dial that in just right. And so we did a lot of pre-testing, a lot of to kind of get to where we were, and then we got it. We put it into the FIFA building where Rhys has been working on. He was kind of talking about some of that. So we trialed it there to the shallow profile to doing a little bit bigger testing area at UT. We have a 4,000 square foot green, or not a green, but like an athletic field. And then Michigan State's got some of those as well. They've got some areas to where there was a full match that was done with the permavoid shallow profile system we're talking about, where permavoid's about a little over 2 inches thick or so. Maybe, and so you're looking at maybe 3 inches, I guess, of a profile that's a lot of air can move through it. It's kind of what we were trying. This one directly over concrete, it dissipates very similar to that of a full sand profile field, which was something we were kind of blown away with. But then you also have a lot of air that can flow underneath it, a lot more air than if you had sand. Although sand is very porous, and there's lots of air that's through it. But we were kind of getting that, and you could see a very huge difference in some of these stadiums that were able to, like when we did the full test of what we did at the very start, getting it, trying it in the FIFA building, kind of stair stepping it up, watching the progress to where you had it installed in the game, and then professional teams were playing matches on it, and the match went very well, and kind of seeing kind of how that went. So And so there's a lot of things we've been learning, but it seems to me from watching it is you can see how just the very basics of where an idea came from conception to absolute into reality, and kind of every step along the way that there's a lot of research involved, a lot of testing and trialing that looks like we might have just pulled it out of a hat, but we actually have done a lot of research and trial behind everything that Dr. Strock and Dr. Rogers are putting forth when we try these. And so, but I mean, for me, what I've learned the most, Rhys may have some more to add, but the sod quality, the lights are going to make a huge difference, and then moisture control is going to also be essential to get this.
How about Rhys or John? Any takeaways that you've learned, things you've seen over the past couple of years that stick out other than what Kyley shared?
Yeah, I just had the same sentiment that Kyley did, is that when something I'm speaking on tomorrow for this event we're putting on is talking about kind of the short window these guys have to essentially have their field. So, I mean, grass is put inside 3 weeks for the first game. And then essentially their last game will be within a 3-week period. So basically it's their field for 6 weeks. And so back to what Kyley was saying, they don't have a lot of time to make any sort of massive management practices or anything along those lines to be able to improve that field if it shows up in poor quality. So no matter kind of how good the field manager is, what we've found is that sod production and how well it's established and grown in and delivered is going to be utmost importance to kind of the success of this tournament, especially with the indoor venues.
So to follow up on that, what, and I know you guys, and this is probably appropriate given, you have this event coming up tomorrow at Michigan State, and Kyley's en route to it now as we go through this session. Talk a little bit about the education, right? I mean, because there's an education piece here of educating somewhat the field manager, but a lot of the takeaway theme that I have from today is there's a lot of sod farmer education, right? To teach the sod farmer about the benchmarks that need to be had for production of the surfaces that'll be used. Kind of talk a little bit about your strategies for doing that and maybe where you've made the greatest inroads.
We've it's all comes down to the education. You're right, Jim, and working and having the open lines of communications with starting with the sod farmers who are the lifeline to produce the grass for these venues. And it's a change in the culture of some of it. It's not just growing sod like they typically do. A lot of them are growing high quality sod on plastic already, but it's collecting the clippings, removing the clippings, and mowing them multiple times a week, like every other day or 5 days a week at least. It's that intensity of management, like you are managing an athletic field on the sod farm before it comes in. And we're having the second of 2 field days, and we're going to have another one in next April. And we got all the field managers here from the stadiums, as well as the sod producers are here. So we can sit down and have exchange, because we learn from them as much as they learn from us as well. So it's a two-way street. How's this working? How's that working with different systems of what they're doing? And so we build off of that, and then we try to take what they say they've seen back to the research farm and replicate it and put it through and quantify what they've anecdotally known all along a lot of times.
And does every stadium get paired up with a singular sod farm, or will one sod farm serve multiple stadiums?
Yeah, so one sod farm will serve multiple stadiums, but then each stadium has a designated sod farm, so that will be providing the sod for them. Definitely. So there's all over, and some of them will be seeding their own. Will be seeding like in Mexico City probably, so they'll just seed in situ in the stadium. But there's, other than that, most of them are going to be getting sod, and it's all sod on plastic.
So that you had the field day in April, and that was largely stadium and sod farmer education. You have one now, you have another one for next April. Will that kind of continue through 2025, and then you'll get to a point in 2026 where now we're done with the education piece, we got to get out there and go do it? Like what are your benchmarks for 25 before you hit the ground running in 26?
One of you want to take that?
Well, a lot of looks like what we're going to be doing is there's the Club World Cup, so there's going to be for those of you
oh no,
there's a tournament that FIFA puts on this year. set.
So yeah, Kylie's breaking up. So yeah, we're in 2025, there's the Club World Cup. It's just been announced, and it's almost like a pre-trial. It's a 32 team tournament. It's like the same with what the traditional World Cup's been, but it's the club teams. It might be Chelsea versus Bayern Munich, whatever teams are going to get qualified for this Club World Cup. And it's a big tournament that's going to be hosted, and it'll be a way for us to showcase some of the sod that's been grown on plastic that we've worked with systems and putting the grow lights into these dome stadiums and having the first run through trial going through basically to prove it before 26.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's probably got to be pretty helpful for you guys to have like that kind of pseudo dry run to catch anything early.
Yeah, and that's what happened in Dallas. You know, in Dallas, you know, they've done all sorts of different scenarios in AT&T Stadium where they roll up the artificial turf and they've just put sod over concrete and played international friendly soccer games on that. They've put concert flooring on top of artificial turf and put sod on top of that. And, you know, they even built up a 6-inch sand layer with irrigation and everything and gravel and put sod on top of that for Copa, and it played really well. When they did the permavoid just last month for the Canada-Mexico game, they could establish that way faster than bringing in all that sand and irrigation. They could do it in one day, install the permavoid, put the sod in, and play the game on it. And both teams, Mexican and Canadian national team, said it played outstanding. Wow. And Kyley went down, and Yvonne went and tested it, and it tested just like it would our sand-based fields with the flex machine, and the ball bounce met all the FIFA standards. It was fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. We have another question in the chat here, a very specific question. Will the grow light spectrum or Kelvin change because of the sod on plastic or being indoors?
Well, being indoors, we're at the mercy of what the current industry is providing for grow lights and and if you think of all the grow lights that are available, LEDs and high pressure sodium lights, we're going with the LEDs for the indoor stadiums. Just because that spectrum provides a better growth of the turf grass. But all of these companies that currently have grow lights for stadiums, it's to supplement mostly heavy shaded stadiums, but not completely indoor. So we're also looking at changing the wavelengths of the different grasses, and we can adjust blue, red light, and we can manipulate how quickly the grass grows and how short and how stubby we can make it. And we can increase lignin by increasing, you know, blue light by 35%, and we can increase lignin by 40% in the plant, make it more durable, turn the red light on, get it to grow and recover faster. And we're looking at those types of recipes. That's some of the work that, you know, Conlon Burbrink's going to be doing for his PhD, and looking at different wavelengths, but also looking at different photo periods and DL and intensities of the light. And that's where I mentioned the 22 moles of light is our target. And it's, if you can do it in 12 hours or 6 hours, there's not a whole lot of difference. So you just have more intense light for a shorter period of time. We want to target that 26 or that 22 moles of light per day.
Okay, cool. That's a great answer to a very specific question. I need to bring up our GCSAA certification points here for a second, so our superintendent colleagues can get what they need. So I will do that. While I do that, is there anything specific that you might want to leave the audience with, just in terms of kind of final words?
I think from my perspective, a lot of the research that we've done hasn't been done in a silo. Like Dr. Sorokin said, we've been working a lot with field managers, let us come test. A lot of the sod farms that let us come test, and send us, we were able to get sod from them. So it's been the whole turf industry has been very open in general from what we've been trying to test and do. And it's we couldn't do it on our own. We've been very blessed to have everybody kind of willing to help us out. Let us come test the fields. Most of the field managers have let me come in, test their surface. Been more than happy to kind of give me anything that they could do, like any help I needed. They were all about trying to push it forward, how to make things better, whether it was from a collegiate level to professional level to like any sod farms have been amazing too that we've been working with. And so I think there's a lot of things because without them couldn't have got, because with doing all the testing we've been doing, we've been trying to kind of create. And we want the worst performing field to be the highest performing field that we've tested so far. So we don't want anything dropping below that threshold to be extremely high performing for the World Cup. And we couldn't have done that without everybody's help. It's been definitely a big a group effort. It's not just a single. And I really appreciate everyone that's let me come test or giving me advice or talk about stuff. Everyone has a lot of different great ideas that have been very helpful as we've been kind of going through this whole process.
All right.
Rhys?
Well, thank you for that, Kyley. I'm sure that your colleagues here share the same sentiment, and I'm going to let them have their parting shots as well before we sign off. But for the superintendent folks that are listening with us, this is your GCSAA event approval code right here. For those of you that are listening, it's 999-254-04-33611. That code has absolutely nothing to do with pesticide credits or pesticide certification. This is only for golf course superintendents. Make sure if you are a superintendent and you are wanting to get your CEU, that you list today's event date, October 1st, 2024, when you input this into the GCSAA website. I'll leave this up for a few minutes where John, you and Rhys, anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off here at the 12:30 mark?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Rhys, and then I'll finish it up.
Yeah, just to basically expand on what Kyley was saying, it's just been really rewarding up until this point, and then pushing forward for another 18 months, 2 years, just the community that we've kind of built to be able to get this project done and working on this project, and then getting to the point where the position I'm in, having the opportunity to work with undergraduate students has been really cool for me to kind of go from working for you, Dr. Brosnan, at one point while I was undergrad, to then now being in that position to kind of educate younger minds and show them and open doors and what have you. And that's kind of been something that's been really rewarding. Is there's 3 of us on this call right now that we're calling the World Cup team, but there's way more people behind the scenes that deserve tons of credit for what they've done to be able to help us get this project not only started and ongoing, but to be successful.
Yeah, it's a small army for sure. Both at Tennessee and Michigan State, 2 universities. There's a lot of folks that will be on the acknowledgement slide when it's all over, right?
100%.
Absolutely. And to build off of that, because that was a great segue, Rhys. I couldn't be more proud of the people that are involved with this project, and just looking at the growth of Rhys over the last few years, the leadership that he's taken. Taylor's not on this call, but Taylor Williams, another research technician of mine. I mean, and Kyley, we've all got the best team, but I've got some of the best people in the world that working for me with me, and what we do. And from the undergrads that are getting this to the ones at Michigan State, the undergrads, the graduate students, the technicians here, the Jackies, Ryans, Evan. It is a team effort. And then I can go to your technician anytime, any of your technicians, Jim, and get answers of your grad students. And, Zoe, who's a new worker for Becky, she's enthusiastic, and she's always asking questions and inquisitive about things and getting involved. It's tremendous being able to do everyone that's part of it. And it's I can't wait to see what comes out of it when it's all said and done. Because in 1994, I wanted to be a golf course superintendent, or get into golf course construction and design in the golf industry at Michigan State. And it was the World Cup that changed my life and made me want to do sports turf research for the rest of my life, or my career. And it's taken me to where we are today. And I can't wait to see the students and what hopefully I'm alive 30 years from now, where they are 30 years from now, and what they've accomplished, because it's pretty cool. Ivan's already doing great things and going on to work for FIFA. And so is Jake, and that's from Michigan State. So that to me is the biggest thing and thing I'm most proud of. And I just love seeing everyone's growth of this.
Yeah, I can't think of a better way to end our 2024 Turf Tuesday series than that, Dr. Sorokin. So let's leave it there, and thank all of you for your time. I know, your World Cup team is super busy, and you're literally everywhere, going a million miles an hour in different directions all the time. So thanks for spending an hour with us on this session. And As mentioned, this is the end of Turf Tuesdays for 2024. We'll be back in 2025. If you are a listener to this and you have an idea for a topic or guest, please let our team know, whether it's myself or Dr. Bowling or Dr. Sorokin or Dr. Horvath. Pretty wide open for content ideas, and hope everyone has a good remainder of their fall, and we will talk to you all next year. So thanks for listening.